Alright, in this video segment, I'm going to be discussing layers in AutoCAD, why they're important, and why we need to use them inside of our drawings, okay? I'm going to be jumping back and forth between this PDF file that I have here. This kind of just explains things really well in a clear way for you guys to see. And then I'll go back and forth between that and AutoCAD right here on the side. So whenever I discuss something specific, I'll hop over in here and I'll show you right where that item is inside of AutoCAD so that it's just clear for you guys to see and understand. Alright, so starting off, we need to discuss line weight and line type a little bit. So this should be a review from your first year studio courses last year. Okay, so these are just some of those basic concepts that are essential when it comes to producing construction drawings. Okay, so line weight is important because it helps to make your drawings clearer and more legible to read. It helps to differentiate the objects on your drawing and make the person who is looking at the drawing understand exactly what you're showing them. Okay, so clear and legible line weights will communicate your design better than any combination of AutoCAD commands. You have most likely been introduced to line weights in your studio courses from last year, and these conventions have existed long before AutoCAD did. So it's important to understand how to use these conventions, okay? So basically what this is saying is there's a standard format for what type of objects should get which line weights, okay? And you're going to see this throughout the industry. Anywhere you go, everyone's going to stick to sort of these same standard set of guidelines, okay? So when we're drafting by hand, we adjust line thickness by changing the type of lead in our pencil or the pressure that we apply to the paper. And in AutoCAD, we adjust the line thickness by selecting different colors for the different kinds of lines. All right. So looking down through here, inside of AutoCAD, we have a set of colors that we can assign to the different line types, and the colors actually have meaning, okay? And based on what they're saying up here, you can directly correlate the color that we're choosing for the different objects inside of our drawing to the thickness that the line should be represented as whenever it's printed out on a piece of paper. Okay, so starting off, our heavy lines, these are used to delineate objects in planar section that are cut through. Okay, so red is going to be our heaviest line weight, and you can see sort of the thicknesses here, followed by yellow and then green. All right, so red, yellow, green in order. These are the three thickest line weights that we'll encounter inside of AutoCAD. All right, then our medium and light lines, these are going to be cyan and blue. Okay, so these lines are used to delineate a change in plane or a corner in elevation, for example. In a floor plan, these lines can represent furniture or casework. Okay, so going on then, light lines, magenta, that's color 6, and then white and black is color 7. These lines are used to delineate a change in color, material, or surface. In a floor plan, these lines can represent a transition from carpeting to wood flooring. In elevation, these lines can represent crown molding or trim around a door. All right, then going on, we have very light lines. These are used to delineate surface, texture, or material patterns. In floor plan, these can represent wood or tile flooring materials. Colors 8 and 9 do not have specific color names assigned to them, and they are rendered as dark gray and light gray. Okay, so you're going to see that in just a second when we go here in AutoCAD. All right, and then after this we have line types. Okay, so what you're seeing up here is what's known as a continuous line. That's a line that is just a solid line and it doesn't have any dashes or breaks in it whatsoever. But then we also have our other line types being hidden lines or dashed lines, and these are used to represent different things on our drawings. Okay, so for example, we might use hidden lines to delineate major objects that are above the floor cutting plane, or objects that are hidden behind other objects inside of your drawing. Okay, so a good example of this is if I'm drawing a floor plan and maybe I'm in a kitchen or something and I want to show that there are overhead cabinets above my countertop, I might use this hidden line type to just show the person reading the floor plan that there are upper cabinets that are not being shown directly on the drawing, but they can see them if they refer to a different drawing like a elevation. And then we have center lines, and these are used to delineate the center line of objects such as doors, windows, or building structures. And this is the command to use that inside of AutoCAD. Okay, these are not used quite as much. They're not as relevant for our purposes. Maybe for more architectural specific cases, you will use center line more, but usually we're just going to be using the dash lines. All right. Alright, so on this page here, this is going to be showing you guys why line weight is so important and how it helps to make your drawings a little bit easier to read. So you can see on the left here, this is a floor plan that shows everything represented as a same line weight. And you know, obviously we can tell what is a wall and what is a door and what is furniture just by looking at it. But with it having all the same line weight, it just makes it a little bit more difficult to read at a glance. So then looking over here on the right side, you can see that there's been some line weight added to this drawing. And that just helps to make the objects stand apart from one another. So we can see that our walls here and our columns on the corners, these have the thickest line weight. And just by looking at a general overview of the plan, you can easily see what is a wall and what is not. The doors then have a little bit of a lighter line weight associated with them, and then the furniture have even lighter than that. And just having these within your drawing just helps it to read clear, like I said, and make everything sort of stand apart from one another. Okay? The whole goal with our drawings, we're just trying to communicate things as clearly as possible, and even though line weights might not seem like the most important thing, it's just an extra layer that helps your drawings to look better and just read more clearly to the contractor or whoever else needs to look at them. All right. All right, so moving on to layers, more specifically inside of AutoCAD. We use layers inside of AutoCAD to serve three primary purposes. All right, so first, like we've been talking about, line weight. That's one of the most important things. We assign different line weights to the layers by assigning different layer properties based on color. Okay, so we'll assign different colors to the layers in order to tell AutoCAD what line weight we want the lines to be printed out as. Okay, so lines inherit their color and line type from the layer on which they are drawn. By changing the color of a specific layer, AutoCAD will automatically change the color of all lines in this layer. All right, so as this says too, we can also assign the different line types to our layers, and any lines that we tie to that layer once it's made will automatically inherit any of those properties that we have assigned. Okay, so color and line type. The next thing that we use layers for are for organization. All right, so this helps us to categorize and organize our lines that are inside of our drawing based on what they represent in your drawings. Okay, so for example, doors, walls, etc. And then lastly, and this is huge as well, probably honestly even more than like line weight and representation, is visibility. Okay, so once we have assigned our objects to different layers, we can easily toggle them on and off for the different types of drawings that we're going to be creating. All right, so a common misconception, and I've seen students in the past do this, is they think if we're creating different types of drawings, for example, like a demolition plan versus a furniture plan versus a construction plan, they assume that you would take a floor plan drawing and you would copy it one time for each different type of drawing that you're going to be making. And then basically you go in and you delete the things out that you don't want. So for example, if I were to look at this floor plan here, they would think that I would go here and I would copy. Okay, so make a duplicate of that. And let's say this plan I want to be my furniture plan, so I want to leave the furniture on it as it's shown. But then this plan I want to be my construction plan, and on construction plans we don't show furniture, okay? So what a lot of people will do is they will take and go in here and on this plan highlight the furniture that they don't want and they will erase it, okay? Like that. So then they would have a furniture plan, and then they would also have their construction plan over here. Now this is the wrong way to do it inside of AutoCAD. Okay, this is where layers are so important and they come into play. With a layer, we can set for each of our drawings a different preset for what layers we want to display. So that way we aren't duplicating our lines and making our file bigger and bigger by just copying everything a bunch of times and having a bunch of individual drawings to manage. We just have one drawing that we make here. We assign our layers to each of our objects, and then we use our visibility settings to toggle those different layers on and off based on our needs. Okay, so going back over here, to control our layers inside of our drawings, we use something called the Layer Properties Manager. Okay, so the Layer Properties Manager is, this will look a little bit different on my screen than yours because I have my AutoCAD a little bit condensed here. But if you go up here to the Layers tab, you're looking for this button right here that says Layer Properties. Okay, and when you click that, that's going to open up this new window. So this is our Layer Properties Manager, and I talked about this a little bit in our very first lecture. I gave a brief overview. But inside of our Layer Properties Manager, we have a bunch of different buttons that we use to control the different layers that are inside of our drawings. Okay, so first we have the New Layer button. So that's going to obviously add a new layer to our drawing. That's this button right here with an AutoCAD that looks like this. After that we have delete layer, so delete layers right here, it's the one with the red X. And then we have set current, so that's the screen button right here, and that's going to change which layer you're currently drawing on. So you want to use this button whenever you change the objects that you're adding to your drawing. So for example, say I'm working on adding in some walls and I switch over and I want to start adding in some casework. If I have a layer in here for my casework, I would go in here and select that layer and then hit that button to make my casework layer my current layer. So then all of the lines that I'm adding in from that point onward will automatically be put onto the casework layer for me, and I don't have to go back later and switch the layer that they're on. Okay? So going on here, this is just some ways to modify our layer. So if we have a layer and we click once on it, we can rename the layer. Next is our light bulb that's next to each layer. So these icons are used to turn the layers on or off. Honestly, we're not going to be using these too much. What we're going to be using more often is this freeze option here. So freeze is used well, it just says freeze or thaw layer, but basically it does the same thing as on and off, but we use it in a way to control the visibility between different drawings, and that's going to make a lot more sense next week when we start talking about viewports and paper space and setting up our drawings for printing out. Okay, but basically it's a way to control which layers are on and off on a per drawing basis. Okay, so the regular light bulb just does it universally throughout the entire project. If I click off here it's just going to be off everywhere in my drawings. But then the freeze and thaw, it's going to control it based on the drawing layout that I'm currently looking at. Okay, so that'll make more sense, like I said, later on. But just keep in mind the difference between them. And then lock and unlock, that's this little icon right here. That's going to make it so that any object that's on that layer cannot be modified if it's locked. Okay, so if there's something that you have drawn out and you don't want to change it in any way, it's exactly how you want it, or you just don't want it to move or anything like that, you can lock that layer, and then anything on that layer you can't modify until you go in and unlock the layer. All right. After that, we have our color setting. Okay, so the color setting, and I'm just going to create a new layer to sort of demonstrate this. Okay, so for example, I'll make that A door layer. So I'm going to go up here and click on new layer, and then I'm going to call this A door. Okay, and then if I expand this a little bit so that we can see my color settings, get rid of that. All right, so if I click on the color, it's going to bring up this window here. Now you'll see that we have all of these colors available to us. I think in total there's 255 different colors that we can select, but what we want to worry about is these colors down here. Okay, so if we refer back to our first page that we were on, you can see that each of these colors had a little number associated with it. Okay, so if you look here, that's what that's talking about. So red is number 1, yellow is number 2, green is number 3, cyan is number 4, blue is number 5, magenta is 6, white is 7, and then colors 8 and 9, those are those 2 gray colors that they're talking about right here for the very light lines. Okay, so these are the only colors that we're going to be worrying about, and the only colors that we want to select whenever we create a new layer. Okay, and for our set of layer standards that we're going to be looking at here in a little bit, those will tell you which color you should select for each type of object in the drawing. All right, so going back down here, you can see from this example that they have that the A door layer is set to cyan. Okay, so that's the one that I'm going to choose, and then I'll just click on OK. And as I said previously, the color is really important because that's going to control the line weight that these print out at in the end. Okay. Next we have line type right here. So you can see by default the line types are set to continuous, but if for some reason we wanted to change that, this is where we go to do it. So let's see, for example here, let's say I have this layer, a wall above, and I want that to be the hidden line type. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create that layer. All right, and then go in here and I'm going to change the color to blue. All right, and then the line type, click on where it says continuous, and then you can see right now I only have these 2 options available to me, so continuous and phantom 2, but we need this one that says hidden 2. So to add a line type into our file that isn't currently in here, we have to click on the load button. All right, and once we do that, we get this whole list of line types that we can add in, and we get a little preview of them onto the side. So I'm going to scroll down until I find the one that says hidden 2. That's this one right here, and then I'm going to click on OK, and now that's added and loaded into my file. So then I just have to go in and then select it from this menu and then click on OK, and now you can see that that is set to hidden 2. All right. All right, moving on, we also have, aside from the layer properties manager, this thing right here, we have the regular properties panel, and that is this panel that's up here. Okay, so the properties panel, we don't want to touch this too much because basically what this does is it applies overrides to the different lines in our drawing. Okay, whenever you get into overriding things to look a certain way, it can cause a lot of issues because you may not realize which objects are being controlled by a layer and which ones are being controlled by an override. So let's say, for example, to clarify that a little bit, I'm just going to close out of this right now. Let's say I draw a new line in here. Okay, and I want to set this line to be on my door layer that I created just a minute ago. All right, so to do that, to switch a layer, you want to select your object first, and then you want to click on your layers panel, and then you want to click on your little drop down menu right here while the line is selected. Then you just click on the layer you want to switch it to, and then it'll switch. Okay, so now you can see that it's cyan, and if I select it, it's telling me that the line is on the A door layer. Okay, so now let's say for some reason we wanted to switch a property about this line, maybe its color or something like that. If I go up here to the layer properties, you can see right now the color is blue, and that's being controlled by the layer that the line is on, right? So as soon as I switched that line over to the door layer, it inherited those characteristics we assigned to it in the layer properties, right? It automatically turns cyan, and it has the continuous line type. But let's say for some reason I want to override one of these settings. All right, maybe I want to change the color of it to green or something like that. Now it's still on the door layer, but I've overridden the color to be green. So this is a bit confusing now, because whenever I turn my door layer on and off, this is going to go with it even though it's green. So if I've forgotten that I've done that override, I might be really confused. I might wonder why that line is disappearing when I want it to stay. Maybe I think it's supposed to be on some other layer. So that's the reason you tend to want to avoid overriding the colors and line types of lines using this properties menu. You might find some sort of an application where you'd want to do that, but typically you just want to control the colors of the lines and their line weights by creating layers and assigning them to those layers and just sticking to it that way. All right. So they kind of reiterate that right here. The properties panel is located in the home tab of the ribbon, and it's used to modify different properties of any object inside of AutoCAD. By default, objects have the by layer assignment for color and line type. All right, so by layer means that the objects are getting their color and line type from the layer that they're assigned to. So like I said, good AutoCAD drawings assign the line color and line type properties using layers. It may be tempting to change the color of lines in your drawing using the properties panel, but you will save time later in your project if you just create and use layers to control the colors and line types of your lines. All right, so be aware that this exists, but stay away from it if at all possible. Okay. Okay, so now they're talking about the layers panel that we have built in, and that's the thing that I was using just a minute ago. So this is what you guys are going to be seeing on your screen. So we have the button to open up the layer properties, and that's what we go to create new layers and delete layers and things like that. But then we also have the drop down, and as you saw a minute ago, that's where I go in and I assign different layers to my objects. So just to give you guys a better demonstration of this is part of your lab assignment for the week. And what you're going to be doing is using the layer manager to create the following layers that they're showing right here. You're going to be assigning these colors to them, and then you're going to be switching the different objects within the drawing to those specific layers. All right, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add these few layers in, and I'm just going to start the assignment for you so that you understand what you're supposed to do and sort of how this layer manager works. Okay, so what I would do is I would go ahead and I'd click on this to reopen my layer properties manager, and then I would add in some new layers to represent what is shown here. So if I go into add, and then the next layer is going to be a glaze sill. Okay, enter, and then we want color 7 for that. So let me expand a little bit. Color 7. All right, so that's white. Next we want a glaze. Okay, and then our color for that's going to be color 3. Green. Okay. Next is a wall. And my color is color 1, red. And then lastly, a fern for furniture. And my color is color 6, magenta. All right. So now that I have that, I'm going to collapse my layer properties manager. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to start assigning the objects in my drawing to the correct layers. So for example, I would go in here and I would find all my wall lines. And you want to make sure you select only the lines that you need. And then you want to go to your layers panel up here in the ribbon, and you want to find that wall layer and then switch it to it, and then just hit escape to exit back out. Now I'm going to show you a really helpful command to do this really quickly, and that is called match properties. You can use the match properties command from this properties menu up here, or you can just type in the command match prop. Okay, so what this command does is it lets you select a source object and then copy those attributes to any other object that you click on. Okay, so if I want one of these wall lines to be my source object, I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to go around, and at any other line that I want to be on the wall layer and have the same attributes as the source object, I'll just click on it. So I can go around and click on all of these, and you can even do it as windows. So if there's like a bunch of objects that you want to change, you would go around and you would click on it that way. All right, but basically you're just going to go around to everything that's supposed to be part of the walls, every single little segment, and you're going to do match property on it and switch it all to the correct layer. Now, usually you don't need to do this because you're going to be drawing this. You're not going to be drawing everything in one line weight and then going back and switching them, ideally. So this isn't the typical workflow, but this is just to give you an understanding of how these tools work when it comes to layers. All right, but for this assignment, we're just going to go around and do this for all of our little line segments. Okay, and then when you're done, all of these wall lines should be red. Okay. You're going to do the same thing for like the furniture, for instance. So if I highlight this chair and then I go up here and I switch that to the furniture layer, you can see that the chair turns magenta. Same for the couch. Okay. So whenever we go back up here to our layer properties panel, we have tools, like I said, like freeze layer, and that's used to control the visibility of layers on our different drawing sheets. So for example, it says this is going to freeze the layer of any object that we select. So if I were to click on that and then choose any line on a layer that I want to hide in my drawing. So for example, if I don't want my furniture, I can click on that and you can see that anything that's assigned to that layer automatically disappears. Okay, so then if I go back to my layer properties manager and I look at my settings, you can see that I have a little snowflake here next to furniture, and that's telling me that that is currently hidden in the view. Okay, if I were to undo that and turn it back to a sun and then go back to my drawing, you can see that those come back. Okay, so this document I'm going to upload to the folder on Blackboard. But basically, whenever we're creating layers to use in AutoCAD, we need to follow a standard naming convention. And this naming convention is one that's been developed by the American Institute of Architects, AIA. And this is just a list of the layer guidelines that we're going to be conforming to. And these are used pretty universally throughout the industry. Most places that you'll go and work will adhere to some sort of a naming convention that follows this one pretty closely. But basically, you can see that for each of our different layers that we're going to be making, we have these different fields that are separated by dashes. And up here, this is explaining what these different fields mean. Okay, so first we have the discipline designator. Okay, this is the first letter that's used in each layer name. So that is these A's that you can see here, and then you can see these S's. Again, going down a bunch of A's and S's. And this example here isn't showing any I's. I stands for interior, but sometimes you will see I's thrown in here as well. A stands for architecture, and S stands for structural. Okay, so that's just to identify which discipline the layer is tied to. And then we have major groups, and major groups are 4 character abbreviations that identify major building systems. So that's this field right here. So you can see this group is identifying annotations, and then these ones here are identifying details. This one's identifying floors, and then columns and grids, elevations, sections, floors, and grids. Okay, then we have minor groups. Minor groups are 4 character abbreviations used to further define the major group. Okay, so for example, we can see that on our annotation layers, we have 3 different layers based on the type of annotation. So we have a dimensions layer, we have a notes layer, and we have a text layer. All right. And then lastly, we have a status field, and that's used to designate the phase of construction. Now, this isn't always used for every single layer. It kind of depends on what the specific layer is, but sometimes you'll see this associated with a layer. So for example, one of these that uses that is A wall D and A wall E. Okay, so this one, these two, they don't have a minor group. It just goes discipline, major group, and then status field. Okay, so A wall D, that's going to stand for A wall demolished. So that's just going to show any walls on the floor plan that you're going to be getting rid of when you start the new construction. A wall E, that's going to show any walls that are existing in the building, but they're going to remain. You're not going to get rid of them. And then A wall N, N is going to stand for new, and that's going to identify any walls that are brand new that you're adding to the project. All right, so like I said, I'm going to be uploading this document to the Blackboard folder. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you understand what I mean by layers now and why they're important. And we're going to be using layers a lot more as we continue this week and next week.